Good evening, everyone. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our guest this evening, our featured speaker, Dr. Francesca Savoldi. Also, our special guests, Professor Hilborn Watson, Dr. Tamanisha John, and attorney and journalist Jomo Sanga Thomas. We also have special guests from Mexico, Lou, and Ms. Leticia Gallon. This evening, we are here to talk about ports and their role in the modern world. We chose the theme Neo-Plantation Economy as part of interpreting ports in the Caribbean. And this term, plantation economy, emerged in the 1960s by a group of progressive economists who call themselves New World thinkers. Among them were Lloyd Best of Trinidad and Tobago, Norman Govan of Jamaica, and several others who espoused the theory that despite our so-called independence as nations in the English-speaking Caribbean, the economic model that existed in character was still akin to the plantation model of economics, this extraction of resources, the exploitation of human labor, and the export of profits. Here in the Caribbean, ports have been both at times a curse and a blessing. The curse, to some extent, is that with the arrival of the errant Italian navigator, Cristobal Colon, popularly known as Christopher Columbus, who thought he was in India, hence we were called the West Indies. Ports became the infrastructure that facilitated the kidnapping, selling, and forced labor of our ancestors through the European slave trade. Some call it the transatlantic slave trade, but I was reminded recently that the Atlantic never enslaved anyone. Ports also facilitated the trickery and hardship experienced on our Indian ancestors through indentureship organized by the British. The blessing of ports is that they are necessary infrastructure to facilitate trade and the legal movement of people and to facilitate human development and exchange. Today, we have with us in the personality of Dr. Savoldi, another Italian, not one who came to loot and pillage, but to navigate us through an understanding of the role ports are playing in facilitating the exploitation of working people and others in the contemporary situation. With that, I introduce our moderator for this evening, Sister Yaya Marin.
Yeah. Greetings, Brother Akko. Big thanks. Brother Akko, I don't know if you wanted to say something about who Caribbean Dialogue is, because this is a collaboration between Caribbean Dialogue and United Black Association for Development Educational Foundation, UEF in Belize, which is one of 4 pillars of the only African Black-owned independent media house in the country, a Mandela newspaper, Creme Radio, XTV, and UEF. Brother Akko?
Yeah, Caribbean Dialogue is a platform that was created by some of us in the US during the Caribbean, also some of us from the Caribbean, during the pandemic. It was a platform in which we discuss issues we believe relevant to the Caribbean. We have been inactive for a while, but we decided to reactivate ourselves. And this is one of our first events. We will be soon having a book discussion on the book Return to the Source, and we have invited the author who did an update of that book. And so that will be coming out soon. So in a nutshell, that is Caribbean Dialogue. We are an informal discussion group of Caribbean citizens, both in the Caribbean and abroad.
Thanks, Brother Akko. So today's conversation or reasoning will be ports development in the Caribbean, symbols of national development. And I have the honor of introducing the feature presenter today. Her name is Francesca Salvoldi, PhD, is a human geographer from Erasmus University in the Netherlands and Ca' Foscari University, Venice, Italy, investigating how infrastructure of circulation, in particular ports, reshape cities, socio-ecological relations, and everyday life. She's the founder of Contested Ports Platform. Visit the website. Welcome. Go right ahead, Francesca. You
Thank
have,
you.
go ahead.
Thank you, Yaya. Thank you so much, both Yaya and Ako, for organizing this event, which which framing is very interesting. And thank you for inviting me. And I'm obviously honored to share some insights of my research with you. Should I share? I prepared a few slides. Do you want to introduce the other guest, or should I go ahead?
You could go ahead. When the next guest will speak, then we'll share. We'll
Okay,
do a
so
bio and them.
okay, I'll do a little introduction and then I've prepared some slides to make this easier. So I've been working on ports and territories and the conflicts that ports generates with surrounding territories for about 6, 7 years now. And what I'm trying to do is to bring back ports to the public critical scrutiny, changing this paradox that surround this infrastructure, which is basically the fact that over the last 30, 40 years, ports have become bigger and bigger. They become this invasive infrastructure, this conflicted, this ungovernable infrastructure for city, but at the same time, they've become more invisible to the public eye. And this is not a coincidence, as we will see. So I thought of doing a little presentation on the trajectory of ports, of contemporary ports, and how they evolved recently, why they keep expanding, and why they produce conflicts. And then I talk a little bit about the cruise sector because it seems that it's a topic of interest in the Caribbean, well, and the Mediterranean as well, where I'm from. And we will see what are the impacts and also the architecture that is behind their functioning. And I also want to share the experience of the successful experience of other communities fighting port expansion. And so I hope we will be able to see what are the points in common between contemporary port development and the idea of neo-plantation economy. Okay, so let me just share some this. Oh, I have requested the permission to share some.
Yes. Okay.
Okay,
I'll have to make it a host to share the slide. Okay.
okay.
And make it a host. Okay.
I'm the host
You're the host now.
now,
Yeah.
so let's share this with you. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, let me just deal with my screen a second. Okay. Do you see it well? Or maybe I should do this.
We can't see this clearly. Let me just, while you get that sorted, make a correction to what the conversation is about. Ports development in the Caribbean, symbols of national development, or conduits for a neo-plantation economy is the question. The mic is
Yes.
yours, Francesca.
You see the first slide then? Okay. Why
Yes, I
can't
can see the first slide.
Okay. So this has been, let me just change this a bit. So there has been, for the last few decades, a generalized forgetfulness around ports, unless you were a dock workers, that they have been struggling for many decades and for a century or more than a century, I would say. So indeed, ports has been incredibly uh, they become incredibly large and they have proliferated everywhere, as I was saying. No? So, as you probably have heard before, everything that nowadays is consuming the world, 80-90% of that travels by the sea. And this was made possible by the reorganization of ports and shipping over the last 50 years. That's this reorganization have created the material condition for the globalized neoliberal economy that we have now. And the way to do that was basically creating a race to the bottom of all the cost of transport, maritime transport, and making possible the delocalization of production towards countries like China, where the cost of labor was cheaper, and also it has accelerated the extraction, especially from the global south. So the restructuring and the proliferation of ports are implicating in the making of this uneven geography of neoliberal globalization. And I always like to quote an anthropologist that work a lot with the US, but also with, I mean, she's based in the US, but she works a lot with Asia and especially Indonesia. She's called Anna Singh. And she has called this system supply chain capitalism, which is a system where global production and circulation of all the goods that we consume are reorganized through decentralized networks of suppliers that are looking for maximizing the profit through exploiting the difference across different regions. And what are these differences? They are basically different in environmental regulation, and labor regimes, labor rights, labor salaries, etc. So here in these slides, on the you see this image, just to have an idea of the trip that is what it takes, the travel that it takes a typical pair of shoes nowadays. As you see, there is a lot of traveling involved to maximize profits. So a typical pair of shoes nowadays travel between 23,000 and 30,000 kilometers. So it's madness, huh? And for allowing this system of globalized supply chains to work, maritime transport and ports have to reorganize how they worked. So they have been completely restructured, especially at the end of the 80s, to reduce costs as much as possible, as I was mentioning before. But the first material technology that has started this transformation was the civic adoption of the container, which is this box that you see at the top. It was a military invention, and it was used by the US military the first time in the War of Korea in the 50s. And then in 1954, an American entrepreneur decided to use this container as a commercial use. And basically in 10, 20 years, all the ports of the world became standardized. And the ports that didn't standardize, they were not competitive. So you see here how in 50 years, basically, it's 50, 60 years, how ports have transformed completely. On the left, you see the Port of Philadelphia.
Francesca, hold on one
Yes.
second. I'm getting some messages here that some messages that the slide, something is on top of the slide.
Something is happening with the slides? Have
Yeah,
you seen
okay,
them?
it's good now. It's good now. It's
Oh,
good now.
it was your text that was above the slide. I thought that you wanted us to see it.
Oh, no. This is my text. That are my notes there.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me do this in a different way then, so you can see them better. Okay. Well, anyway, I'll just share it that way. I hope you can see them anyway. Let me just. Okay, so basically what you're seeing here is I usually take notes because here it's quite late, it's like midnight. So I don't want to get lost in my conversation and try to be as fast as possible. But basically what you're seeing here is how ports have changed in the last 60 years. On the left, you see the Port of Philadelphia. And on the right side, you see the Port of Shanghai, which is the image of the contemporary ports, which is basically very automatized, is giant, is full of containers, there are not many people working on it. And yes, it's giant. So a lot of ports have become like this. This is the typical image of how ports are nowadays. And let me see, for maximizing profits and controlling the sector, at the end of the 80s, big companies bought smaller companies. So this is called merging. Shipping companies were merging. And as you see,
Excuse me, Francesca, sorry to interrupt you. XTV is saying they cannot see the slide. I don't know why they would not be able to see the slide at XTV.
Okay.
I don't know if that was before they made that correction. I just saw that, okay, they're seeing it now. They're seeing it now. I just wanted to make sure everyone can see it on XTV. You could go ahead now.
Okay, so what you're seeing in this slide is basically what happened to shipping companies during the 80s and the 90s. they've been merging. The shipping company have been merging. So the bigger shipping company has been buying the smaller one, and this is what happened. In the the graph on the right side, you see that in 1992 there were about 32 shipping companies. They were controlling most of the trade. And in 2017, you see the graph on the left, we just had three alliances of companies that control the 80% of the total trade, the total geography of trade. No? And this is very important because it means that we have a condition of oligopoly. And the condition of oligopoly is very important for understanding ports because these three corporations, they have developed a massive lobbying power. They can tell the port authority, or you give me what I want, or I compete with you from another port nearby. This is a massive power that they generate with this merging. And what do these shipping company wants? They want resources, which is more space, more public funding, water. So all the resources that they want funding for expanding infrastructure with public money, etc. So and also I would say that what they want, what the company wants, is that Port Authority do a sort of blind eye on the environmental damages that this creates. Obviously, there are no proof on this, but it's a behavior that I have noticed. So what happened with this concentration of companies is that at the same time the companies were merging and becoming basically an oligopoly, these companies were also buying bigger and bigger ships. So we ended up in a condition that is called naval gigantism. As you see here in these slides, if in the 60s the ships could travel with 2,000 containers, in 2020 the shipping containers are transporting 24,000 containers, and now they're even more. They keep growing. Now it's about 25,000. And the Chinese presented a ship the other last year in Hamburg Maritime Week with a ship of 27,000 containers. So it keeps growing. And so the Panama Canal has been expanding. And with the growing size of the ships, it means that ports need dredging because they need deeper water, a deeper column of water. So the issue is that this expansion mechanism follows an irrational economy because they keep expanding even if it isn't necessary. They do not expand because there is an increasing demand of trade from territory. They expand, can you hear me? Yes. They expand because it's simply a mechanism of competition. And this is a mechanism of race to the bottom of this cost. And it's irrational because this continuous growing is generating a cyclical crisis of overcapacities. So why do ships and ports keep expanding if it is an economics? They do it because they are doing a race to the bottom with all the costs, as I said. So to reduce the transport costs, because you have bigger ships, it's economies of scale, right? So you have bigger ships, you can transport more containers, and the unitary cost of the transport of the container decline. Then they want to keep expanding because of reaching agility, because nowadays we have a model of production which is just-in-time production, which means that production starts only when an order is placed. So the shipping is actually what makes possible this system of just-in-time production, because they need to be able to tell you when you order something online and you expect that it's going to be delivered in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you need to be sure that the shipping company actually do the service in the time that are guaranteed to you, right? And the third mechanism that is sustaining ports, so we say the race to the bottom, the agility, and the total competition. It means that all ports are competing with each other. So the ports are not coordinating. they are just competing with each other, which is madness, because it means that all the ports need to grow for being competitive with each other. Even if this growth, is not really economics. So it's not really rational economics. So ports expand to be competitive, even if there are two ports in the same region. It's a model that it has really gone too far and has been started being criticized, although also from academia, not much, but there are some critical voices on it. So the consequence of this model is that the cost of all this is paid by territories. It's paid by territories with public finances that are used for funding these millionaire projects of infrastructural expansion because they are really expensive. And the return to citizens is basically zero because the wealth that is generated at ports is not redistributed. So communities get evicted from their land, coastal ecosystem get destroyed, and basically local communities are obliged to bear the cost of this race to the bottom, right? Oh, I am a host, so I have to omit. Let me just do that. I have to omit people that comes in, I think. Let me just do that a second. How do I do this? Sorry,
Those
second.
who may just be joining us, you're listening to Caribbean Dialogue, and we have ports development in the Caribbean, symbols of national development, are conduits of a neo plantation economy. And we have Dr. Francesca Salvaldi sharing with us. Go ahead, Francesca.
Okay, I have admitted the new people coming in, and I got out from my slide, right? I should share them again, I think.
We can still see the slides.
Oh, okay. Wait, because I'm not seeing them, but okay. So I was saying that basically at the end are the communities that are bearing this cost, so what we have here is basically a cost-benefit mismatch, which means that the regional or the municipal governments pay the infrastructure, but the community are losing in that. And who is
this
getting?
Before you upgrade Gmail storage.
Somebody needs to mute their mic. If you're not speaking, please mute your mic.
Okay, so the cost benefits mismatch means basically the local territories are paying while the biggest part or almost all the profit is being repatriated somewhere else. So the port authority get some money from the ship to dock. Locals maybe get some wages because people working in the port. But even with port expansion comes with automation. So port expansion is not really producing social prosperity for territories where they are located, and hence we have conflicts. So as you see here, some typical example of the impacts, very big impacts of expansion of ports. People get evicted from their land, as I said. The beaches and the sea suffer deep consequences. You have some interesting cases here, which is like at the top on the left, you see a case in India where the construction of the port has basically accelerated coastal erosion. And right at the bottom, you have a case in Antwerp, which is where our friend Yaya, our friend Tommaso is. This is the second biggest port in Europe, and the expansion of the port has evicted an entire community. On the right side, you have a photo of the port of Colombo in Sri Lanka, where the massive sand mining used for expanding the port and building also a district associated to it that basically destroyed the western coast of Sri Lanka with deep impact on the fishing communities. And on this coast, there are a lot of fisher folks that had to leave their places and to basically move to the periphery of bigger city and become new urban poor. And then there is all the issue of intoxication of the environment, of water, of air, atmospheric pollution. So the impacts are really, really they are really big impacts. And then we have the issue of the cruise, which is a sector that have a lot of similarity. Can you hear me? I hear a bit of echoes.
Yes, we're hearing you.
The cruise sector have a lot of similarity with the logistical, with the commercial port sector, because they basically they basically follow the same path. First of all, they also are managed by an oligopoly, and we will see this in the next slide. But they took profit advantage from the fact that ports infrastructure were becoming bigger and bigger, and the seabed was becoming deeper. So they took advantage of this situation to grow. But the cruise sector is basically what in the economists, the critical economists, consider a big free riders, which means the free rider is basically an economic behavior that is considered a market failure because it takes resources and public goods, but they are not paying this back, or they are underpaying it. And so the cruise sector basically passed from being a small luxury sector to a commercial and accessible one. And so nowadays we have these ship that are transporting between 5 and 10,000 people. And the way they make money is obviously through achieving economies of scale, but also through not paying costs. And the costs are the financial and the environmental costs. And here you see the oligopoly that is running the cruise sector and the insane scale of their profits. I wanted to put here the profits of these four companies that are the four biggest companies that control almost all the cruise sector, because it's really shocking. So in 2025, Carnival Corporation made $3 billion clean in profit. Royal Caribbean, 4 million. MSC, which is also the same company that runs the logistical sector, Mediterranean Shipping Corporation. This is a family-run company. It's a very strange story in which the son is running the container business and the daughter is running the cruise ship. We could talk more about it later. It's interesting. But what we see here is basically that this company makes the profit of this company is really out of scales. And if you look on that side, who actually become wealthy is even more shocking, because look at the small salary of the CEO, which is a CEO of Royal Caribbean get between 10 and $25 million per year. So this, to me, it's just out of scale. And then who become wealthy out of this sector is also the billionaire shareholders that are involved in the business. And also the port authorities are getting some money because of the docking, like in the commercial sector. And then you have these very ridiculous salaries of the people that work on board. A cabin steward can get $400, $500 per month. And they're working 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. So most of them come from the Philippines and Indonesia. So the inequality on board is really shocking.
Give another 5 minutes.
Yes, I'm going to be quicker. So how do they make money? They make money through the flag of convenience, which is basically a business practice that is allowing company to register the ship in a different country than where the ship owner lives. And so the ship owner are registering the ship in this country to bypass environmental regulations, safety regulations, avoid taxes, hiring cheaper and less protected laborers. It's like basically a false flag. And it became common in the 1950s in the US, obviously. And With this flag, basically ship owners can avoid environmental compliance because they are registered in countries where they on purpose keep this regulation low or less strict, let's say, because of the shipping industry. And so this here you see some very practical data on impacts. This is the toxicity produced by a cruise ship. You see that is a multidimensional issue because you have from solid waste to wastewater and ballast water. So what happened with the waste on board? It gets incinerated, and then the incineration of this produce dioxins, and this then is dumped into the sea, and then you have black and gray waters. I mean, we could talk forever about the environmental impact of the cruise ship, but what I put here is really the shocking figure about the atmospheric pollution. And I'm putting this because it's one of the dimension of pollution that has actually been studied properly by an NGO, which is called Transport and Environment. So what you see here is that the cruise ship in Europe produce more SOx, sulfur dioxide, than 1 billion cars. And in Barcelona, 106 ships emits 3 times more SOx than all the cars of the city. So it's really, really harmful. And SOx, this sulfur dioxide, are not the only chemical that they emit. There are PM, there are nitrogen oxide, etc. And then we could talk about the greenwashing of the companies, but this is another chapter, and we need more time for it. So what I believe is that the cruise tourism is really misunderstood by many public administration. Cruise have a dominant narrative saying that they are bringing responsible tourism, but actually what they are doing is that they bring large masses in small areas, and what they are doing is causing overcrowding and damaging the ecosystem. And tourism, the tourists, when they get off the boats, they don't spend much because these systems are designed to consume everything on board, even scooters, well, for rental scooter for when they get out of the boat. So it's a system designed for consuming as much as possible on board. And some
Almost out of time. You're almost out of time.
Did I run out of time?
Yes.
Yeah, give her a few more minutes, please, Isaiah, so she could continue.
Okay, so basically this is the point, right? The point is this. Now we have had 15, 25 years of mega cruise tourism, and we look back and what do we see? We don't see prosperity and development. We see cities devoured by free rider tourism, like in Venice. We see seasonal schizophrenia in port cities where summer are overcrowded and winter are deserts, where shops are closed. And also we see here the very interesting figure that was shared on the press and by the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, highlighting that the country has invested $300 million, and in 30 years they got back 10%, which means that they got major economic loss. And if you remember before, if you compare this with the salary of a CEO, is basically 30 years for 20 millions. One CEO gets 600 millions, which is the double of it. So there are global actors that are promoting this, like the World Bank, the IMF, the World Economic Forum, and CLIA. And they do it through promoting this narrative that is a distorted narrative. And so does this resemble a neo-plantation economy? It looks like it, at least in terms of producing structural patterns of dependency, control, and unequal value distribution. And yeah, you see here the platform contest reports, which I'm not going through because many of you already know, but I want to share with you a very interesting case of a successful case of counter narrative that is a story from Australia, but that I share often because it's really interesting. So basically, this was a project for constructing a new cruise port in Gold Coast in Australia. And the citizen organized in a way that was very efficient, and and the project was scrapped. The recipe of the success was basically combining activism with expertise. What they did is basically a study showing that the economy they already had, the blue economy that they already had on the coast, it was already producing. It was already producing salaries, sustainable jobs, and it was it was distributed. It was an economy that was distributing in the communities, while the project that was coming was basically substituting this with a different kind of model. Yeah, so this is a very important case because it shows that there are alternatives. There are alternatives to this model, and the cruise model is not the only way to to create wealth. And actually, the narrative of wealth is really a dominant narrative that we need to dismantle because basically it's a lie. And I can give you more details, but I think I'm stopping here to not take up so much time, and I stop sharing.
Big thanks, Doc. And so that was our presentation by Dr. Francesca Savoldi. Next, we have Dr. Tamanisha John. She'll have 7 minutes to present. Tamanisha John, PhD, is an assistant professor in the Department of Politics at York University. Tamanisha studies Caribbean development, sovereignty and politics, as well as Canadian foreign policy, economic imperialism, financial exclusion, and corporate power. The mic is yours, Sister Doc. 7 minutes.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I don't think that I will use the whole 7 minutes, so hopefully that gives some people time to speak. I'm happy to see Caribbean dialogue rejuvenating itself again, since I certainly appreciated Caribbean dialogue a number of years ago. And I guess that my insight here, of course, I will be using a lot of the information shared by Dr. Savoldi. And then also, I think in my talk, just trying to historicize a bit more port development in the Caribbean. Because as Dr. Savoldi were talking, I was thinking about how Dr. Savoldi's insights also related to Ako's opening speech. And that is that if we were to historicize port development in the Caribbean region, ports began to facilitate processes of primitive accumulation to help develop capitalism and capitalist profits for European empires abroad. And this was not just done through the port creation itself, but also through the enslavement and dehumanization of Africans, indigenous peoples, and the various waves of indentured systems that brought in Asians primarily from India. And so port development in the Caribbean is and was ideologically grounded and done for the purposes of taking wealth from the physical and geographic locations in the Caribbean region. And this wealth or profit was compounded by the oppressive and dehumanizing situation that was enforced onto African, indigenous, and Indian people in the region. And I think that from the presentation that just happened, we see that this ideological and material understanding of ports still exists today. And so the port itself is not just a sort of physical infrastructure, but it's also a signal of capital accumulation and class struggle. It's located near waters, which also serves as the gateway of invitation for exploitation in its historical usage. And in the present day, it begs us to, oh my God.
Brother Hilburn, please put your mic.
Okay, let me start. Trying to mute him.
If someone is the host, I think that they can mute them. Okay.
Facilitators, Tim.
Um,
Who has the host? If you click on the
now
three
it is
dots.
Francesca has it, so she has to return it.
Okay.
So you could just go to the participants, find his name, and mute his mic.
Okay, I don't hear the echo, so I'll just continue where I left off. And I think that I was saying that the port itself represented this physical infrastructure of capital accumulation, but also class struggle. They're located near waters that also serve as the gateway of invitation for exploitation in the region historically. And in the present, the question on ports is whether we view them as a means to continue to extract surplus for empires or imperialist powers, or instead view them as a vital site that enables, some sort of situation where domestic growth and improvement can happen. And I would say and argue that in the Caribbean, ports continue to present as a conduit for neo-plantation economy, given the continued capitalist logics of disciplining labor and backward ways to attract foreign investment, including having the ports being owned, controlled, or managed by foreign corporations that continue to attract what I would call backwards investments of what the sort of cruise tourism industry is but one by any means necessary. So this means that ports in the Caribbean continue a tradition of non-investment in local economies through favoring things like repatriation of profits or because it's located on waters, representing a sort of direct taking away any sort of local wealth or profit that could be used internally for internal development. And so the modern port system in the Caribbean remains a way to export wealth from the Caribbean. And as Savoldi noted, these ports are managed by big corporations that often act as monopolies given mergers. And Savoldi was quoting Singh, and they sort of talked about how they exploit differences in environmental regulation and labor regimes in port developments, including in the Caribbean region, where states essentially are engaged in a race to the bottom, attempting to offer the weakest labor laws and the weakest big business regulations and the most tax holidays and, tax reliefs to foreign corporations to quote unquote attract sort of development and investments. But really, none of these investments or corporate attractions stay in the Caribbean in a way that is consistent or helpful to Caribbean peoples and populations. And so now we have to think about what would it take for ports to then work in the Caribbean for Caribbean people to help foster real national development. And I think that this would mean that ports would have to allow countries in the Caribbean to engage in trade and have full public working class ownership of them on their own terms, meaning that they're able to freely trade with each other and themselves without viewing one another as competitors, and also without prioritizing the political, economic, and security interest of imperialist countries like the United States. I know that it was sort of noted that the CEO of Royal Caribbean is getting a small salary of $10 to $25 million a year when you think about the billions that Royal Caribbean brings in and how much its shareholders make. But I think that this is indicative of why even the claims that the government in the Caribbean region simply owning some share or some percentage also falls short on ensuring that national development is somehow achieved by partnering with corporations intent on exploiting a country for their own major benefits or profits. Cruise tourism was mentioned as a system designed for consuming as much as possible on board and not investing locally when the tourists briefly dock in the Caribbean region. And I also think that, to just end off, I guess, quickly and on a good note, national development does not and cannot happen without national conversations. And in the Caribbean region, we do not have national conversations. We hear about deals going through or memorandums of understandings being reached without any sort of public consultation with Caribbean people. And I think that once we understand that no conversation around national development that does not happen without a national conversation can actually lead to good development in our countries, I think that we're making a good first step. And the reason that these national conversations don't happen is because too much of what is now branded as development is just a continuation of the old plantation model, or now the sort of neo-plantation model, disguised in ways that keep it out of sight and out of mind until it becomes too hard not to ignore. So I think that that is why when Salvoldi says that sort of these ports generate so much conflict with neighbors, but seem to sort of skirt around public scrutiny, even though the invasive infrastructures are right there in our faces, it's because keeping it sort of out of the national conversation works to ensure that that won't happen. And so it becomes out of sight and out of mind until it becomes too hard to ignore, meaning, oh, now we've reached the point where we don't have clean drinking water, or now we've reached the point where the dock workers and the other workers have to continue to protest for not being paid meager wages. And so I'll just reiterate and also end my sort of conversation on how Savoldi ended, which is to say that it is a lie that port development or even cruise tourism creates wealth. And these lies and myths need to be dismantled if what we actually want is national development. And I'll end there.
Thanks, Sister Dr. Manisha John. And now Brother Ako will introduce Brother Jomo Sanga Thomas. He'll have 7 minutes to present.
So let me, if you're not hearing me, it's raining heavily here. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so let me introduce my good brother, Jomo Sanga Thomas from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He's a lawyer by profession and a journalist, and also a former speaker of the National Assembly in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, has been active in the radical movement in the Caribbean as a teenager. So without further comment, I introduce you to Brother Jomo Sanga Thomas. Unmute, brother. You're muted. Right, good.
Yes, good evening. I am absolutely delighted to be here, to be in such illustrious audience. The issue of ports and what they mean to Caribbean people or to development in the global south is critically important for us to understanding development, because a number of politicians, including many, if not all, of the neo-colonial politicians who hold sway and power in the Caribbean, have pushed the developments of ports, either new cruise ship berths or just the port. I know in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, here where I am, the old Ralph Gonsalves administration had touted the desire to build a new cruise ship berth and to build a new port. In fact, we opened a new port last October.
Listen, Brother Jomo, is there any way you can put a light on?
Oh, you can't see me?
It's dark in the room.
All right, give me a second.
Thank you. While we're waiting for him to come back, oh, what a difference the light makes.
Is that better?
Big thanks, brother. Yes. All
Good,
right.
good. All right, yes. So we just built.
Sorry to interrupt you again. Because the light is behind you, you look
Yes,
like
it
you're
is.
in shadow, like we cannot see your face clearly. If the light was directly in front of you, we could have seen your face clearly, but we cannot see your face clearly. I just need to say that to you.
Oh.
Big difference. There's already a big difference. That's it right there.
Yeah?
We can see better. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was saying that we just built, opened last October, $750 million port. It was a big investment. It caused a tremendous amount of conversation, confusion. The government touted it, well, the former government, because the Ralph Gonsalves government lost the November 2025 elections. But it was touted as a major development that would bring lots of jobs and other things to the country. But the government was unable to sell or to see fundamentally what are the financial benefits that would come. And in fact, We also, in the last 2 years, opened one of the more modern hotels, a Sandal Hotel. And, tourism is touted as a big development driver. And the former Prime Minister, Al Gonzalez, said that, look, Sandals is here. They would need a lot of products. So the port is going to facilitate the movement of these products into our country. A number of people didn't buy it. And in a sense, what happened is that it helped to fuel the political situation, which led to the removal of Gonzalez. As Dr. Savaldi said, there's a conversation in Antigua about these kind of development. We were putting a lot of money in. I mean, we built an international airport that opened 8 years ago that cost like $1 billion. We built the modern port, which was just opened last year, that cost 750. So there are these big development projects in our context. Yeah? Big development projects that are said to be important in doing, in helping to push the country along, in terms of helping to push the country forward. But the people don't see it on the ground. Here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 4 out of every 10 persons live in poverty. And that is a major, major problem. When I listen to Dr. Vivaldi and some of my own readings on this, I am reminded by the text done by the outstanding researcher and writer John Perkins. He has a very important book called Confessions of the Economic Hitman, in which he talks about precisely these kind of projects, where a very small percent, the 1% in our country or in Trinidad or Belize or wherever else, they do these projects, and each of them or that small group can get some money, but the country is sunk deeper and deeper into debt. And the projects which they do bring little or no development to the countries. So I think that the topic which we have, ports, new plantation economy, is right on target. I think that many people who are looking closely and not listening to the jingle or listening to the rhetoric can see that these development projects create a lot of problem. But it's part of the neoliberal project. It's part of that project to claim that you have growth. And I mean, as early as the 1970s and the 1970s, a number of economic development thinkers and historians, I remember reading a text by Dr. Walter Rodney, in which he said that growth is not development. That you can have 5% growth, you can have 7% growth, but there's no real fundamental development. So as if we are replaying these realities, and I am glad that we are having this discussion. It means what it means that these countries are going to go more and more into debt. The government in St. Vincent here announced recently that our national debt is $3.5 billion. The debt to GDP ratio is 114%. Every 37 cents out of every dollar goes towards servicing the foreign debt. So it's a major, major problem. We have, by the time we do the foreign debt and then we put aside monies to pay salaries and amortization and the sinking fund, we have like about 27 cents to do education, security, health. So we see these projects are really failed projects, but these projects come in the context of a neoliberal system where the mass media tells the story that this is the way to go. And I think these kind of conversations, which tends to push back against that kind of reality, are significant and important. And I hope that we can continue them for the betterment of our people. That would be my just short, succinct presentation on this very important topic.
Big thanks, Brother Jomo. Brother Akko will now let me look at my I didn't look at my agenda to see what happens next. But what I wanted to do, based on what Brother Joma just said, I definitely, because the mass media, the traditional media, is guilty of the propaganda. So I have to recognize XTV, Creme Radio, a Mandala newspaper, and these are products of Belize's Black Power movement. So big respect and recognize Krista Flowers, who is the MCO at XTV right now. So now we have questions for 15 minutes, and then we'll have a summary by Professor Hilburn Watson. Brother Akko will introduce Professor Hilburn Watson, Brother Professor Hilburn Watson, and then we'll have final comments by Dr. Francesca Salvoldi. So it's now question time. We're doing good with time. So questions. I know we definitely we have two people here who we want to hear from, and they're from Mazahual, Mexico. Sister Luciana Salvemos and Sister Natalie Leticia Gayon, who's a journalist, about what's happening on the ground there, especially in the past week. So, sisters, if either one of you would like the mic to share, now is your time.
Unmute, Lou. Unmute. You're still muted. Right.
Yes,
Good.
thank you. Sorry. Well, I think Natalie is the right person to talk right now because she was covering all what was happening on Thursday. It was a manifestation in front of the Secretaría de Medio Ambiente in Mexico City. That is the one that evaluates the environmental impacts of major projects like the one they wanted to do in Mahahual. Well, Natalie was covering all the interviews and everything that the Salvemos Mahahual movement was doing there. So maybe she has some news to share with us.
Just before she does that, Sister Lou, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do with the collective?
Okay, yes. Well, I'm Luciana. I live in Mahahual, Mexico. I've been living here for 15 years. I live, my activities are not related with the cruise ship, never were. I am not in favor of this kind of tourism. There is a lot of information that Dr. Savoldi shared with us. Basically, those are the reasons. People don't spend real money on the community, and the costs all goes to the community. So public services are absolutely collapsed in a community of maybe less than 3,000 people. We get maybe 17,000 tourists each day. So this is like ridiculous. The public services are not designed for this amount of people using it every day, and as well as I think Tamanisha or Jomo was saying that the poverty, it causes a lot of poverty around these ports that they are supposed to generate $1 million every second, and population is every time poor and poor. Government debts raise up, and this is like something is not working in the equation, you know. So as soon as they announced this big project in Mahahual, there was a group, a petition was created against this project. And as soon as I realized and started meeting my neighbors that they were working on this, well, I jumped in, and since then we were fighting. We were trying to find like a little crack to go in and break this, and well, it happened. It happened on Tuesday. It happened. It was declined. So it's crazy. It's like we're making history. It doesn't happen every day. So I don't know. I'm speechless.
Thank you, sis. Sister Natalie, it's your turn.
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me. To give a little bit of context on Mahawal real quick. Mahawal is a small town in the south of the Caribbean, and it has a population of roughly 2,800 people. It has a cruise ship port that has been here for 25 years. So the economic dependency is mostly of cruise ships. There is local tourism, but not as much as what it is from, foreign tourism. And 25 years, and there's still a lot of poverty in the town. It used to be a fishing village. There's lack of basic infrastructure. There's a need for a water plant. There's just a lot of things, potholes, the electricity goes out. So the people live, it's a very hard life. Royal Caribbean bought the port last year and announced this incredible private destination called Perfect Day Mexico. Their plan was to bring 21,000 passengers a day and creating a water park. It was going to have the tallest water slides, the slowest, longest river in the world. I mean, it was going to be their big, they called it, quote, their biggest, baddest, boldest destination. And it created a lot of division in the town. I think that the town has been abandoned by the government for a very long time. And you have this company that's coming in promising gold, jobs, prosperity. We're going to build a plant that's going to fix everybody's problems. And a lot of people believe it. These communities, this region is of Mayan descent. And it's also in one of the most pristine, vulnerable areas. It's a protected area, sort of. We're surrounded by a protected area of mangroves, of low forest. There's jaguars. There's hundreds of bird species. So it's also environmentally a very vulnerable place. You also have on the Caribbean Sea the Mesoamerican reef. So there was a lot of issues on the environmental side, but also you have the division of people want work, they want jobs, they want prosperity for their families. And, something that resonated a lot with Dr. Salvoldi, Dr. John, and Mr. Thomas is what we've seen, the history that's seen in these communities that, years later, there's water extraction, there's loss of resources, there's so many things that are destroyed irreversibly. And so Salvemos Mahawal, as Luciana mentioned, decided, well, no, we need to fight for our community and we need to sort of figure out what we can do against this project. And they went on a legal basis. They started trying to figure out through documentation what's wrong with this project and how we can go into lawsuits and different ways to fight this. It's been a David and Goliath story because, you've got a small collective in a very small town fighting against a multi-billion-dollar foreign U.S. company. And so they started, little by little and putting in lawsuits and looking at documentation, the environmental impact statement the Royal Caribbean had to put out. And there was a lot of inconsistencies, you're talking about this region has cenotes, which is underground water caves, and that's where the communities obtain their fresh water. So you're talking about this company coming to extract fresh water in order to have these tourists, enjoy water slides. So there was a lot of different things that they were able to argue. And on Tuesday, the environmental minister, she came out and said, this project is not sustainable for the area it's in. We're not going to approve the environmental impact statement, which was huge news it went viral, it went worldwide. But it was a little interesting how they played it, because with Mexican laws, if the environmental ministry, Semarnat, if they would have revoked and said, we're not accepting this and made it official, the project is done. Right? The project is done. They're going to have to figure out another something else to do because Royal Caribbean is the owner of the port at the moment. But she came out in a press conference and said this publicly without it being official on paper. And so 2 hours later, Royal Caribbean was able to retract their environmental statement project and say, oh, we're gonna, we take it back. So because it hasn't legally gone through the process of being negated, Royal Caribbean can now put in another project. So the fight continues. There was a victory, and it's motivated a lot of people. There's still a lot of division in the town, but I think a lot of there's this notion and there's this phrase that a lot of people use here. That's we've had a cruise ship a cruise port for 25 years, and how has that economically passed down to the community? The community is still struggling and still living in difficult environment and situations. So now it's more of a monitoring when they put in another project. Royal Caribbean came in very sure that this project was going to be approved. I mean, they came in and they had public, community meetings and promised the world to the community and smiled and, we're the saviors in a sense. But deep down, they were doing a lot of little shady things. Through this whole manifestation that happened on Thursday in Mexico City and the meeting that the collective had with the subsecretariat of the environmental ministry, we learned that it wasn't just the mega water park that they had put in as a project. They had fragmented their project into 3 different things. And one of them was another additional port for private cruise ships and also a private beach club. And in Mexico, the beach is for the public. It's public access. So anyways, it's been very interesting. The struggle and the fight continues. And unfortunately, it's not just here that they're fighting cruise ships and this sort of economy, there's some in the Pacific Ocean as well, and more projects that are trying to be created here further north in Cozumel, for example. So it's a pattern that we continue seeing, and it has a lot of conflicts.
Big thanks, Natalie, and Sister Lou for bringing us up to speed with what's going on. Someone from Belize sent me this People's Victory. We just found out now that 2 hours later, what happened, but only organized people save the people. So it's very, very important. And that was one of the main objectives of this reasoning, is to connect us in the Caribbean and Abayala, Central America, find out who the credible people are, what the struggles are as it relates to use Francesca's word, contested ports, and to make sure that we're in communication, that we can offer solidarity, that we learn from each other. Does anyone, I see we have some familiar faces in this Zoom. Anyone has any question, comment they'd like to share? We have time for that. Brother Pierre, it's good to see you. Even though I'm not seeing you, I know you're there. Anyone would like to say anything, ask a question, add a comment, Brother Akko?
Dr. Pierre should comment on this Labadie situation in Haiti.
Brother
Yes,
Pierre,
hello. Yes, very informative and very, very informative presentations. I commend all the speakers, and big thanks to Caribbean Dialogue and to you, Bad, for putting this together. So thank you so much. My brief comment is that when the
Brother Pierre, are you there? Can you put your camera on, Brother Pierre?
Put this.
Brother Pierre, can you put your camera on?
I'm not.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm unable to right now, but can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Brother Pierre.
When the baby dog government had put the dictatorial regime of baby dog Duvalier, Jean-Claude Duvalier, had imposed this Labadie deal on the people of Haiti. The access to the beach was denied to Haitians. And basically, it was after the fall of Duvalier that people were able to mobilize and force the, I think it was Royal Caribbean, to open the access to the beach to people in Haiti. And so I double checked this. I did send Brother Ako an article that described the conditions under which this Labadie was created. It's so bad that many people, I spoke to a family from the US, African American family who went on a cruise, and they told me, wow, we've never been to Haiti. And they started telling me the names of the places they've been to. They say, well, we've been to Jamaica, we've been to Labadie. And I said, wait a minute. You've been to Labadie, but you've never been to Haiti. And I cracked up. And then I told him, I said, look, this is Haiti. Labadie is Haiti. It's not an island of Haiti or something. And even if it were, it would still be Haiti. And he was just shocked and amazed. And the area where Labadie is, that's where you have that's near the historic fortress called La Citadelle, and built by Haitians to fight off a potential French invasion. And the Citadel was built back in the 1810s by King Henry Christophe to protect Haiti from a French invasion in case they were trying to reinvade to restore slavery. So those are the comments I wanted to make about this. So I'll stop right there. But thank you for putting this together. This is very informative, very educational. Thank you.
Big thanks, Brother Pierre. This really is Brother Akamotota's brainchild. I just the Golam, because I trust the brother. Brother Joseph Antoine, you have your hand raised. Go ahead. Brother Joseph, go ahead.
Yeah. I was having difficulty unmuting. Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we
Are you
are.
hearing me now? Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. I joined the program a little later than I would have liked to, but the topic is very, very important for us. And some of the issues raised by the various speakers I heard are very on point. Cruise tourism is not something that we should encourage. It's something we should discourage. It's from a number of point of view. From one, an environmental point of view, it requires the destruction of ecosystems to facilitate the structure of that industry. Secondly, it's very wasteful, especially when it comes to food production. And also it encourages enslavement and slavery and so on. We need to discourage that. When governments are forced to borrow money for roads and for other facility, a lot of times it's not ready for the people, but it's to ensure that when these people come around, they have some level of comfort. We have to start thinking inward first and then start trying to make our society in a way or environment in a way that we can share it with other people, but we must make it for ourselves first as a region. So it requires a deepening of awareness among our people, and those of us who knows a little must help others to understand the implication going forward. We have to also take into consideration the statement that was made by Marco Rubio earlier in this year. I don't think people think, I've taken that thing very seriously. And of course, the American, what they call it, the security, whatever, the national security policy and so on. We need to understand that. But lastly, we need to find a way that we will have inter-Caribbean exchange between people like there used to be at one time with the federal palm and federal maple, where people can go from one part of the Caribbean to the other at minimum cost and also minimum destruction to the environment. So these are things we need to really discuss. And as somebody said earlier on, I think one of the speakers, we don't have national discussion And this is something we should have. I said finally earlier on, but let me say, there was a victory recently at the United Nations, and I found it very interesting that it has got little coverage through the Caribbean. I raised it yesterday in a Canary sponsored activity, and they did acknowledge that something needs to be done to further highlight the victory, just as in the case of reparation. Even a greater percentage of people voting, countries voting in favor of it, and that's about the what you call the advisory by the ICJ. So that is, to me, could help to strengthen us as people concerned about the protection of the environment and sustainable development going forward. That we can use those instruments together with the Escazú Agreement to help to protect what we have. And of course, the sooner we can really tame capitalism and find something else in its place, the better for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll close out the question segment.
I want to make one comment here, Sister Yaya,
Yes.
before we close off. He mentioned the federal maple and the federal palm. And those were two boats that ran during the colonial period in the Caribbean. And they ran out of Trinidad in the south and would visit every Caribbean territory up to Belize, I think, including Jamaica. And so they moved boats, they moved goods, people. And so there was a lot of movement of people in the English-speaking Caribbean. The fact that this could not continue is an indictment against Caribbean leaders who sit every month or every so often and speak about Caribbean unity and CARICOM and CARIFESTA. And they create these institutions. And yet a fundamental institution like sea transport, which existed in the colonial period, they dismantled it, and they are yet to even come up with any idea about how to move people in the Caribbean around. And so it's a very important point to understand that we had this connection by sea during the colonial period, and now that we are independent, supposedly it doesn't exist, and it's an indictment against Caribbean leaders in the English-speaking Caribbean.
Thank you, Brother Ako. And so we'll bring this segment of questioning and commentary, which may Rich give thanks for it, to a close. And so we'll ask Brother Ako to please introduce Professor Hilborn Watson for the summary. Professor Hilborn Watson will have 10 minutes. Then we go to final comments by Dr. Francesca Savoldi, and then closing remarks by Brother Ako and vote of thanks by myself. Time check is 5:19 release time. So we have about 40 minutes left for this reasoning. Brother Ako?
So it is my honor to introduce Professor Emeritus Hilborn Watson. He is in the Department of International Relations at Bucknell University, formerly taught at Howard University. He teaches courses on Modern World System, Foundation Seminar, Theories of International Relations, Global Restructuring, and Race, Nation, State, and International Relations. He is also a founding member of the Caribbean Studies Association. He specializes in areas with international political economy, international relations, and political theory. I now introduce Professor Hilborn A. Watson, who was born in Barbados and currently resides in the U.S. Dr. Watson.
Thank you, Ako. Can anybody see me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we cannot see you.
But not see you.
I don't understand why you can't see me. I'm a novice on these matters. Anyhow, so bear with me. So, Brother Ako, if I may begin with a point, right, on your last point, and this is just for information. When they had the federal, that was Federation. Federation died in 1962, and that died with it, technically, right? So, yes, the indictment is a very important point, but then it would be an entirely different session to talk about what caused the Federation to end as opposed to what was said, right? Okay. But here, with the time that I have at my disposal, I listened to Professor Savoldi, I listened to Professor Tamanisha, John, and I kept saying here to myself, so we are in a moment. The global context is global, neoliberal global capitalism. This is not organized around meeting the development requirements of individual countries, especially those in the so-called South. Now, I have a good friend in Barbados who spent years in Washington, D.C. with the IMF and held some of the highest positions in Barbados. And he said to me, Hilborn, the IMF and the World Bank don't give a damn about these little countries, okay? If you think they do, you're making a big mistake. But it's not those to which it's limited, this issue about interest. Now, capitalism is an international form of production largely for private capital accumulation. If you recall from our reading of the history, when the British began setting up these colonies in the Caribbean, they introduced in the 17th century something called the Navigation Acts. And under the Navigation Acts, no produce in any of coming out of any one of the British territories could be transferred to Europe or to Britain in any bottoms, that's ships, other than British ships, even if it were 20%, 30% cheaper to do it using French or Dutch or Spanish ships. No. That's the direct link between the colony and the so-called mother country that comes up today in the neo-plantation model argument. Now, Hilborn Watson has always had problems with this notion of plantation economy. I think it was a mistake that the New World Group introduced this term when it was capitalism, and they did not discuss capitalism, only so-called plantations. The plantation that's charged widely, and as I said, was a unit around which production, raw material production was designed. But it was not the nature of the thing. It was just a technical reflection of what it was. So here we are if we talk about a plantation economy model then, and you talk about the model we have today, neoliberal global capitalism, in which national economic spaces and political sovereignty are integrated fundamentally into the global movement of capital. The cruise ship industry at large, on a whole, if we may call it an industry, is reflective of that particular process. It's not to facilitate the economic transformation of any Caribbean country or any other country, but to make sure that those who own the means of production have wider opportunities to make more capital. And this became an important argument going back to the 1970s. And if you consider from the 70s on, in the United States, for example, 2/3 of the broad mass of working class people did not see any significant improvement in their net income and capacities. So this is not just about our region, it is a global phenomenon, and national states and their processes are integrated into this global movement of capital at this particular moment. So this is what the cruise ship industry, from my vantage point, reflects. So the issues that Professor Savaldi addressed and that Tamanisha talked about, yes, very important issues, but this is what we are seeing is indicative of how this system is organized. I remember a few decades ago when Jamaica was moving in the direction of this Kingston port, what I call ecological as opposed to mere environmental aspects became a big matter, and people were saying it's going to be pernicious, it's going to be destructive. So we have 4 countries in the region: Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, and the Bahamas, that are among the top areas as far as this port development thing is concerned. But Cuba, of course, has been a victim of a terroristic model from the United States based upon embargo, on blockade, and now all the sanctions that are added that make Port Mariel, which is a very sophisticated port, find it difficult to meet the requirements that they would expect for the national development. And if there's any Caribbean country that is established on that principle for national development, it would be Cuba. But Cuba has suffered immensely, and continues to. But the others are links for, especially the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, and Jamaica, heavily around tourism. But it turns out that you've got Puerto Rico, a U.S. territory, where under the Jones Act at the turn of the century, Puerto Rico is like going back to the Navigation Acts. The trade has to be between U.S. ports and Puerto Rico through U.S. shipping. and it's expensive, and it could be transferred more cheaply through others. And then, of course, Puerto Rico is the top hub for tourism in the region. And if you go east, you'll find Guyana and Suriname, Georgetown and Paramaribo are places that are now rapidly, eagerly, feverishly building deep water ports, deep water harbors. And right now, Trinidad is the head honcho in the Eastern Caribbean that can handle the Panama type big vessels. And then they'll transship from Trinidad to Guyana and to Suriname. And the moment Guyana and Suriname hope that by the end of this century, this decade, they will have established the water ports, and then Trinidad is in trouble because since it now transships to them, because they don't have the capacity to absorb large shipping, then Trinidad is going to have to find some alternative. And then you have a place like Barbados, which is tiny island, not much larger than a loaf of bread. People say, what are you talking about? There's some that are smaller. But the point here is that for Barbados, it is tourism. It is tourism. And that feeds to less Antilles territories in a particular way that will continue to change. So what am I getting at? I'm trying to make a point. The point is that capitalist development is not for national economic autonomy. It is not. Now, Tamanisha talked about the need for national conversations, right? But we are from society. The Caribbean is a region where conversations of a national nature that would have to involve the broad mass of the working people is not the reality, because what they do is they may tend to politicize for their political party objectives, but they demobilize the populations. And we're not going to have that kind of conversation in any one of these countries because they're not democratically organized on the basis of popular determination of anything, right? So we face challenges at large. And in this particular moment, then, what we have to bear in mind is the following. We are at a point. If you look at what Donald Trump calls himself, Don Rosum, clownish term he used about himself, if you think about this for a moment, here's what is going on. Right now in the world, between 15 and 18 trillion dollars are floating about without opportunities for any productive investment. From Trump grabbing Venezuela's oil and attacking Iran and so on, a crazy kind of thing, right? On the one hand, the world is technically moving away from hydrocarbons slowly. Part of the problem why Trinidad will find hell before they get the 12 to 13 billion dollars required to modernize port leases, right? Notice that the big oil companies told Trump, Venezuela, no. We're not putting money in there. Among the reasons, the future of petrochemicals is, as far as petroleum, oil, and gas are concerned, so people are moving away from these things. Even in places like Barbados and other territories that rely on diesel, they are trying to move away to more, quote, environmentally friendly fuels, to do the things they want to do, and challenges are arising throughout. So if these companies cannot find profitable investment opportunities for all of this money, and you look at Royal Caribbean. By the way, I was at Labadee in 2015. A cousin of mine was celebrating her 60th birthday, and we did a cruise. And we got there, and they had us roped off inside that area. We couldn't go outside of the boundaries to see where Haitians lived in that vicinity and how things were among them. And everything came off the cruise ship. There were no local places in that vicinity to go and have a meal. So indeed, this process is not organized around meeting the needs of local people. Now, I was born in Barbados, Akko, as you noted, and by the way, I stopped teaching 13 years ago, right? So I'm not teaching any international relations or anything like that. But here, Barbados is a place, if you visit Barbados, 166 square miles, 95% of anything that is arable is bush. Nothing is being grown in Barbados to speak of. Sugarcane industry is basically dead, and agriculture, for other reasons, is very weak. So you go to any typical supermarket in Barbados, and most everything is on the shelves. It's imported, right? So Where do you have a tourism sector that does not rely or cannot function on the basis of local agricultural production? You go to hotels, Hilton and wherever, and you get your meals, imported stuff. And you say, what about the local stuff? And what do they tell us in the hotels? Oh, the tourists don't want that kind of food. Right? They want what they're accustomed to, where they come from. That is always debatable. I spent time in Cuba on several occasions, and I hardly ever had anything on a plate that was imported into Cuba at that time. Local. It's something that can be done. Okay, so let me sort of recapitulate here. Global capitalism is not. How many?
2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Just say yeah. Okay. All right. So broadly, if we focus on what the big issues are in global capitalism, it is anti-national development. If you integrate more closely into the global movement of capital, that's a question of economy, it is a question of politics, it is a question of sovereignty, and sovereignty is an expression of a power relation that is based on national processes but connected to meeting global needs. And every country in the Caribbean, almost without exception, engages in policy making and implementation that's designed to advance global capitalist processes and not national development, right? So, Dr. Savaldi made some very important points. I appreciate those. And I say, if we find on the scale at which she discussed the issue that these contradictions are rife at large, wherever you look, it tells us something, that none of these national states are organized around meeting the needs of local people. And sovereignty is used to deepen the integration at the global level rather than for the particular requirements of each society. Let me stop there, right? I think I exhausted 2 minutes, so yeah.
Big thanks, Brother Hilburn Watson, for that summary. Now we'll go to Dr. Francesca Savoldi, for she has 5 minutes to give us her final comments. Francesca.
Yes, hi. This was super interesting, very inspiring conversation, and I'll take just 1 minute, I think, because a lot of interesting things have been said already, but I think it's very interesting to see how the relationality of the port problem materialize in different countries, and it's visible to see how this is a systemic issue. And so we need to have not just national but translocal and transnational conversation. I think this is very important, and what just Professor Watson has highlighted is very important, this relationality, right? And Dr. John has brilliantly contextualized how ports are part of the reproduction of the neo-plantation economy, and she has also called for taking back the ports. And this means bringing a critical stance on what development is and for who. And talking about development and infrastructure is a really part of the same conversation, because infrastructure are a catalyst of a mode of development. So what I believe, another thing that I found interesting is what Jomo Thomas mentioned about debt. This is often the missing conversation, and in this, it must be prominent in counter narratives, because I've seen cases like Sri Lanka and other places where the development of this massive millionaire project has really created large economic crisis related to debt and the management of debt. And indeed, not many people are talking about it. So, and the debt is that ingrained with the issue of sovereignty. So there are a lot of things to talk about. I think it was a very generative conversation. And I just call for transnational and translocal connection and keeping this conversation going. I've learned a lot being here, so thank you.
Big thanks. We have really appreciated your contribution. Now, Brother Ako will share the closing remarks. We're ahead of time. So just before you share your closing remarks, Brother Ako, I mean, I think really, I'm the facilitator, and I've said absolutely nothing about our struggle in Belize about ports. And so I just want to quickly dash in there that the
You muted yourself on accident.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Sister Doc, for paying attention. From 1978 to 2002, the Port of Belize, which is in the south side of Belize City, smack dab in the middle of working class community, was publicly owned. From 2002 to December of 2003, it was privately owned. In December 2023, the government of Belize bought the port back, so it was nationalized. It's a public port. In early March of this year, I think it was March 6th, as the spokesperson for UBAD Educational Foundation, and again, we are an African-centered community-based organization and one of the three pillars of the only Black independent media in the region, became aware that under the private ownership, the state denied the environmental impact, the environmental clearance that is needed for any developer to develop. At that time, UF was a part of a wider Caribbean initiative, and we were very active in ensuring that the voices of everyday people was recognized. The environmental clearance was denied twice under that private ownership of the port. And then here comes the government of Belize now wanting to do the very same thing, which is to expand the port of Belize as a cargo expansion and to build a cruise space. And so what was surprising this time around when they had the public consultation is the environmental NGOs were deathly silent. The last two times they were robust, they engaged. We depend on them for their scientific knowledge. They were quiet. And so, one of the big things that helped UEF is because we have our own media house. So we were very instrumental this time around. It was our voices alerting people, having public reasoning, having interviews with other media houses. But we did a lot in only 15 days and with almost no resources as we had the last time. Bottom line, the state has shoved it down our throats that this development will happen. It's approximately 450 million US dollars. They're shopping for investors, and I'll say this, and y'all who are in the know, you will know. One of the investors that the Prime Minister of Belize, John Briceño, has said is BlackRock. If you know anything about investors, that are the dirtiest when it comes to investors. But most Belizean people, again, are very disconnected, and you feel helpless sometimes. It's like, so I wouldn't be surprised. It's not that I want this to happen. Like what happened in Mexico, we were excited, and then now we're finding out, hold up, they can still resubmit the proposal for the development. It can still happen. And so it's very challenging as everyday people to organize, to have meaningful gain. And so I really want to thank Brother Akko for this idea and for everybody who is participating. So we had time, so I couldn't leave without saying that we're faced with that challenge. They've already gotten the green flag. The environmental NGOs at the point where the National Environmental Appraisal Committee, which is mostly government employees, as if they will tell their employer, the government, no, you cannot build this port. The environmental NGOs at that point pushed back for scientific reasons, but it's too late. There has been a green flag for this port to be built. And after everything that was said today, we have to figure out a way to, at minimum, let more Belizeans and other people in the region, Abayala, Central America, the Caribbean, become more knowledgeable. Brother Akko?
So, Sister Yaya, thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. Savoldi, for introducing us to these ideas that you have referred. I want to thank Compañera Gayon and Compañera Lou. I think she's left. I'm very happy because we tend to sometimes not move beyond our small space in the English-speaking Caribbean. And forgetting some of that, Mexico and parts of South and Central America has a Caribbean coastline. And these dialogues are very important. So I'm hoping that we can have Compañera Gayon and Lou again on another program, because we need to have this dialogue. We don't know enough about each other. We know more about what happened in Miami and in Chicago than we know what happened in Mexico or Veracruz or someplace like that. So it's very important. So their presence here was very important. As always, I want to thank Dr. John, one of the more brilliant minds, young minds emerging from the Caribbean, even though she was born in the US. But sometimes you can hear her accent. She just slip in sometimes she's bilingual. She speaks sometimes Guyanese and American English. So sometimes you hear it. But I'm very happy that she could be here and thank her for outstanding contributions. Dr. Brother Jumo, my brother, I'm pleased that you are here. Take the time and to give us an insight into what is happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And Dr. Watson, always appreciated, one of my favorite academics and intellectuals from the Caribbean. Thank you all. And to the audience, thanks for being here and for participating. Oh, and don't forget Pierre Labossi of Haiti. Very, very thankful for Pierre for being here. And so thanks to everyone, the audience, and I hope we don't work Dr. Savoldi too much, but we want to have her again. She was in Jamaica on the radio station about a couple of weeks ago. We organized an interview, and as soon as they heard her, they said, "Oh, she has to come visit." So she has invitations to visit many parts of the Caribbean. So this is one Italian we would love to come to the Caribbean, not Cristobal Colon.
Thanks.
Thank you. I feel very honored.
So she's from the tradition of Gramsci, and as you know, Gramsci is one of our favorite philosopher, Marxist philosopher. So she's from the tradition of Gramsci. So we'd like to get more of Gramsci and less of Cristobal Colon to come. So thank you again.
Thanks. We still we've managed our time well. We still have about 10 minutes. So before I close out with the vote of thanks, I wanted to ask, did anyone have any final comments? Is there something you thought about after we went through the agenda that you want to add at this time?
Malaika put a question in the chat. What can we do to advance the struggle of the people and these issues? And I believe that they're talking about the struggles still happening in Belize and in Mexico, and in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yeah. If I may, can you hear me?
Yeah, well, we see you now.
Now we
Oh,
see
you can
you.
see me. Okay, good. No, Tamanisha, I was going to say yes. What we need, I think, is a different kind of politics. We have a politics in these countries where almost everything is organized around some political party, right? And these parties, of course, alternate in exercising governmental power, but they are not organized on the basis of the needs of the people in any real sense of the term. I notice in the case of Barbados, you've got the Motley administration that's been there now, all seats in the House of Assembly are controlled by the Barbados Labour Party. The Democratic Labour Party has been washed out twice, and it could be for a third time. I remember talking to one stalwart from the Democratic Labour Party who said, look, it could be 40 years before this party comes back to be in the seat. The question might be, will it be around in 40 years? But the fundamental issue here is that these political parties that form government form them to meet particular needs that are not consistent with the imperatives of the people. And in a moment where we have all this artificial intelligence, where parties can use AI to write their manifestos, candidates can rely on AI to communicate for them. You have a growing distance between even the very electorate and the parties that control state power. This is not peculiar to a place like Barbados. I think we are a moment where the breakdown of what you might call formal institutional, supposedly democratic procedural principles are going by the wayside. And as this global process of transnational capitalism develops, with multilateral institutions like those in Washington, plus the OECD and others, actually operating like surrogates for national states, it develops a much wider gap, a chasm, a hiatus beyond any imagination, right, between governmental processes and the people. Liberal democracy has been eclipsed largely, and if you take a country like the United States into consideration, as well as European countries at large. I remember there's an Israeli historian named Ze'ev Sternhell, Sternhell, published a book in 2009 titled The Rise of Fascist Ideology. And he argues in that work that fascism is deeply rooted in European cultural life. And I argue in some of the things that America is an extension of that. It is not separate. If you believe in the rubbish about American exceptionalism and it can't happen there, remember Bill Clinton when he was president? There's nothing wrong about America. That's what right about America can't fix. So give me a break. There's no fixing anything.
I have 3 hands raised and I have like 10 minutes.
Let me stop.
Okay, thanks for your input. Brother Joseph, you have 2 minutes, quickly.
Natalie wasn't on before him.
Okay, who was? Natalie.
I think she was on before him. Yeah.
Go ahead, Natalie.
I'll speak real quick. We talk about growth in these communities, but these projects that are coming, I mean, in Mahawal, I guess I'll speak specifically since that's, I live here. These projects promise growth, but they're private destinations. So they're meant for everyone, for these cruise passengers to stay in this secluded space, kind of what we were talking about Labadie in Haiti. You don't leave, you don't spend in the local communities, and the communities struggle. And also the government is to blame as well, because they're abandoning the communities, but depend on these foreign companies, on Royal Caribbean, to come and fix the problems that they have been able to deal with. So something to think about, that's been a conversation happening here after we thought we had victory, was, okay, what's the next step that we take? And the community is starting to push local tourism. Come to Mahawal, come and spend in our beaches, come and spend in our local restaurants. And also like the idea of ecotourism, right? Mahawal is surrounded by beautiful nature, protected mangrove forest. So that's another idea of moving forward, that we don't depend on these destinations that are going to basically, do the predatory, attraction of resources, versus how can we come and spend locally so these communities, don't struggle to thrive.
Natalie. Joseph, you have something to say quickly. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, I wouldn't be long. It was said about the extending the connection with other countries or other peoples in the region. I'm very much in support of that. I am part of a network, Friends of the Earth International, Friends of the Earth Latin America and the Caribbean, that have connection with Mexico right down to Argentina. And there are a lot of issues that similar that those folks are struggling with already, which we could learn from them. Like, for instance, in the Amazon, where the land and the ecosystem have been poisoned by Chevron and also Texaco, and now we have a situation where ExxonMobil is going back to Venezuela. They have just landed a contract. So we have these kind of problems that could affect, even from a food point of view, if you have pollution and so on in the Caribbean. So we need to other people to come together to ensure that this place remain as pristine as possible, this region, and that we secure it for the future. Thank you.
Thanks. Before I give you the mic, Francesca, let me just read quickly from Tamanisha John. I'm more in favor of Mao's understanding of fascism over Gramsci. I'm sorry. I'm more in favor of Mao's understanding of fascism over Gramsci, since it takes into account imperialism, and here reactionary governance or reactionary bourgeoisie democracy is a fascist product of imperialism itself. So Caribbean governments, call them neoliberal or neocolonial, are fascist. They are the enforcement arm of Western imperialism, and this is why they don't have to talk to or care about their nationals. And in this is why you can have Bishop in the 70s in Trinidad talking about why fascism is already a Caribbean reality. She goes on to say, so this is why I'm talking about national development. It's workers and the public, not the state, that should be in charge of ports. The government is not and cannot, based on how it is organized, work for any people in the Caribbean. And Malaika Kambon said, I'm enjoying this conversation immensely. I want to follow everyone's struggles against global capitalist development via tourism, port expansion to the destruction of communities, because it's fascist and the people are fighting back. And then finally, Natalie said, I failed to mention there's a financial trust where each cruise passenger pays $5 for entry to Mexico and the government meets it. This fund should be spent on the community, but as of this message, Mahawal has not received a dollar from this fund. Francesca, go ahead. Final comment.
You are muted. Unmute. You are muted.
Sorry, it's late here in my brain. Just two very quick points that we didn't touch on for next conversation about what can be done to advance the struggle. One is that we didn't talk about labor. What's the role of labor inside but also outside the port? And the second is what can be done, I think, is also engaging people in research, in popular grassroots research, because to build counter narratives, they can be local but also translocal. We need really to collect how people live and how people's economies are, because these are the economies that would be destroyed. And a very strong argument is that this model, this infrastructure are bringing development or are bringing a new form of economy, but we need to know what they would destroy. So labor on one side and grassroots research, and this was just my point to add.
Big thanks. We appreciate everyone's active participation. We ask that you go to XTV Belize Facebook page, XTV Belize YouTube page, share the link. We want to officially thank everyone who participated in making this experience, this reconnection, a reality. First and foremost, Brother Akamatota from Caribbean Dialogue, in his wisdom, who saw the need for us to have this connection with credible people. I cannot say that enough. All my skinfolk aren't my kinfolk. I'm not with the people who are deeply mentally enslaved and institutionalized. So let's be very clear. We don't link everybody. So credibility is very important for us. Ethical leadership is as well. So we want to thank Dr. Francesca Savoldi, who was our main presenter. And we want to thank our other presenters, Dr. Tamanisha John, Brother Jomo Sanga Thomas, and Brother Professor Hilborn Watson, and our sisters from Mahawal, Mexico, Sister Luciana Salvemos and Natalie Leticia Gayon. She's a journalist. Big thanks. But before we go, I have one request from everybody. I want you to do a country call out. So you could just, I'll go according to the screen. I'll call your name and you say which country you're representing. So I'll start off, I'll go from the back, and because I'm showing that I have 5 screens. So brother, is it 5? Yeah, 5 screens. So on my 5th screen, I have Francesca. What country do you represent?
Italy, I guess.
Italy. And then I don't know who's at Samsung SMA135M. Do you want to say which country you represent? Okay. Salonia Ifel Balgobin is from Barbados. Are you there, Salona?
Very much so, and I thank Dr. Professor Watson for inviting me. Very informative, opening my eyes to so many things that are going on right under our noses.
Big thanks for coming. Remember to share the link. Brother Joseph, what country do you represent?
Of course, Grenada and the Spice Island.
Aye.
Maurice Bishop Island. Maurice Bishop country.
Thank you. Natalie, which country do you represent?
Here representing Mexico.
Thank you. Brother Jomo, which country do you represent?
I'm from Jeremy, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I can't say I represent the country, but that's where I'm from. That's
Okay,
where I was born.
then are the people in nurture you make you become the being you are today. Brother Aka, which country do you represent?
Trinidad and Tobago.
Trinidad and Tobago. Sister Tamanisha?
None of them.
Okay, Alva Allen, which country do you represent?
I'm from Trinidad and Tobago.
Trinidad and Tobago. Big, big thanks. Leslie, which country do you represent? Leslie? Okay. A. Corey Gikes, which country do you represent?
Jukes.
Jills. A. Corey Jills, which country do you represent?
Trinidadian, just like Aku.
Aye. Brother Hilburn Watson, which country do you represent?
I'm with Tamanisha and none of them.
All right then. Malaika Kambon, which country do you represent?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I definitely don't represent the U.S. So, I just happen to be sitting here in Oakland, California.
Okay.
But I don't represent any of these imperialist strange governments at all. No,
Great,
I
thanks.
represent the people.
Thanks, sis. Thanks for being here, Brother Pierre.
Yes, Haiti.
Haiti. I believe I got everyone in, and that's an awesome representation of people within the region. So I want to, all of us, give each other a snap. We represent the people on whose shoulders we stand. Oftentimes we don't get recognized as everyday people for the work that we do and the sacrifices we've made and we continue to make. Big respect to XTV. The Master Chief Operator is our sister, Christy Flowers. Again, it will be live streaming on XTV Belize and XTV Belize Facebook and YouTube spaces. We want to say big thank you for everyone who participated. Please share the link, continue the conversations. We will remain in contact with you and to let you know. I think I saw, let me see, I want to make sure I see a message coming in here. So Tamanisha, Ali just posted he was on the USS Nimitz. Oh, and the US and Canada, no. Okay, Tamanisha.
No. I was just saying why I wouldn't say I represent any country.
Okay, got you. Fair enough, sis. Go ahead.
I'm a member of the Haiti Action Committee. So make that part clear.
Yes.
But however, I don't want to have to say what I think about this government in the U.S. So
I hear you. Good company. Haiti Action Committee. If you don't know, go to the website of Haiti Action Committee. Credible source. You have an opportunity to participate in whatever way that you can. And so thanks, everyone. We appreciate you. And remember, only organized people want to save the people.
Okay, which link?
Forever. Yes.
Which link can I use to stay on top of what's happening? You mentioned a link.
You could go to XTV Belize on Facebook and on YouTube. XTV Belize. I will put it in the chat so everybody can see. It's XTV Belize. That's where you could go to listen to this conversation again. And if somebody can just put that in the link for me, please. Where you could go and listen to this conversation again. And then it's another way to stay engaged with the work that is being done in Belize. And then we have partnership with people in the region. On Sunday mornings from 10:30 to noon, Mountain Time or Belize time, Brother Ako and I host and co-host news review talk show. So it's another way to have community conversation. A number of the people who are here today have been in that talk show. Tomorrow, since the 25th is African Liberation Day.
Monday.
Excuse me?
Monday.
Monday.
Thank you. Monday is African Liberation Day. We have Comrade Toivo Ashike, who will be our guest tomorrow on Sunday Review from 10:30 to noon. Mountain Time or Belize time, but again, you could always go to XTV Belize. And Tamanisha, you want to share anything about your news space?
If you want to stay up to date with Caribbean news, or you have Caribbean news of your own to share with a good analytical perspective, you can find Caribbean news on WhatsApp or on Telegram. And yeah, I think the name is literally just Caribbean news.
Okay, I have one more quick question. There's been so many interesting dialogues that have happened. Is there an archive of the shows that have been done that we can go back and look at all of that information?
Thank you, sis. You could go to XTV Belize on YouTube.
Right.
We usually broadcast. There's an archive there.
Oh, okay.
The final comment from Natalie: community conversation is crucial. Thank you. Mahawal is divided, and I think government and these huge companies love that. It creates conflicts which they can use in their advantage. So thank you for keeping the conversation active within the community. And then Francesca said contested ports is also archiving port struggles. So you could just go in the search engine and put in contested ports. Thanks, everyone. Remember, only organize people and save the people. Solidarity forever.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you,
Thank
sister.
you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone.
Great show.
Bye.
Take
Have
care.
a good
Okay.
evening.
Bye.
Everyone, and good night.
Bye-bye.
Yes, Doris.